Militarism. Militarism can be defined as a policy of glorifying military power and keeping a standing army always prepared for war. It has also been defined as, quote, aggressiveness that involves the threat of using military force, the glorification of the ideas of a professional military class, and the predominance of the armed forces in the administration or policy of the state. Now that we have a definition, what do we do with it? One approach would be to determine whether or not the United States is militaristic. But could we agree that our country, along with many other nations, certainly has militaristic tendencies and traits? Perhaps a better approach would be to ask ourselves how we can move from a culture that often glorifies war and idolizes our aggressive preparedness for war to a culture that glorifies peace and nonviolence. Norman Solomon, in an article entitled "Peace No Longer Even Gets Lip Service," argues that the last decade has brought a gradual shift in the rhetoric of politicians, while a tacit assumption has taken hold. That assumption is, war must go on one way or another. The tacit assumption of war without end is now the old normal, again renewed in the wake of Osama bin Laden's death. Solomon ends his article with this disturbing observation. The nation's decade-long war effort in Afghanistan, where it costs $1 million to deploy one U.S. soldier for 1 year, is a grisly symptom of chronic war fever. More enemies are easy to find and even easier to make. A country that's committed to being at war will treat the real potential for peace as an abstraction. End of quote. A great beginning would be for us, at the very least, to give lip service to peace. And how can we move from a war economy to a peace economy? William Sloane Coffin Jr., who is one of my heroes and mentors, wrote, "Presently, the U.S. spends on defense as much as the next 15 nations combined. Our troops are stationed in 75 countries." Coffin also wrote, "For American liberty to be restored and extended, American Christians need to carry on with their country the same lover's quarrel that the prophets of old carried with Israel, and that God consistently carries on with the whole world. We must say yes to what we can and no to what we must. We must see that when a government betrays the ideals of a country, it is an act of loyalty to oppose the government. We must take the road less traveled and be more concerned with our country saving its soul than with it losing face." And Coffin ends his quote by quoting Thomas Jefferson, who said, "I tremble for my country when I recall that God is just." Let us pray. I want to share a brief prayer written by Harry Emerson Fosdick, who at one time was the pastor at Riverside Church in New York City, advocate for peace throughout his life. And it's in our United Methodist hymnal. "Cure thy children's warring madness, bend our pride to thy control. Shame our wanton selfish gladness, rich in things and poor in soul. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, lest we miss thy kingdom's goal. Lest we miss thy kingdom's goal." Amen.
Amen. These are the kinds of things that are consistent with what it means to embrace social and scriptural holiness. I'm an unapologetic Christian and unashamedly United Methodist. I'm also a person who's committed to the peace of Christ, and that peace begins with those of us who are willing to live our lives in such a way that the gospel is reflected without apology. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for committing your lives to not only carrying banners and marching in marches, but living a life that invests in peace. God bless you very much.
Thank you, Bishop.
When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. So my prayer is a very simple one. May our love of peace overcome others' love of power. Thank you.